Okay, so we are live. Hi, my name is Tatiana, and today's a special day for me, actually, because 2 years ago on this day, May 9th, 2022, exactly 2 years ago, I joined Electric Coin Company as the head of product marketing. Since then, I started my own project, Sure, which is funded by the Zcash Foundation through ZCG. I'm on my second grant right now. Haven't been approved yet, but it is being reviewed currently. But the purpose of my first grant was to put Zcash payment users into focus, and I think it's working. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So thank you for tuning in. I get to celebrate my Zcash anniversary with all of you, talking about the thing that I love, which is Zcash. I do have a lot of information to cover, so I am going to read / talk fast-ish, but I'll try to make it clear. So, okay, let's get started. So what is Zure? Zure stands for Zcash User Research and Engagement. Its core mission is to drive ZEC usage. This thing that I'm building consists of two main parts, which are user research and engagement across the ecosystem. In this presentation, I will show you some of the pieces that have come together so far. But first, I want to provide some context. Sometimes I overhear conversations about where Zcash will be in 20 years, and they are so full of optimism. However, it worries me that long periods of relative stability make people forget that things don't always get better with time. The truth is that 20 years from now, we could be living in a completely authoritarian world. A world of total censorship and surveillance in the name of our safety is a very real possibility. In that future, Zcash, along with other privacy-preserving technologies, dies a relatively quiet death long before year 2044, and the world won't even know what it lost. I actually lose sleep over this. How do we prevent that reality from playing out? How do we, law-abiding citizens, well-meaning civilians, protect ourselves from the dystopian future that frankly seems to be inevitable as we barely acknowledge the boiling water we're already in? I'm going to pause those happy thoughts for a second and get into Zcash, our beacon of hope. So what is Zcash? We know that it's a blockchain and a digital currency that protects privacy, but how does the whole thing work? What is Zcash adoption? There's so much going on, and if we want to increase adoption, where do we begin? For clarity, let me break Zcash into 4 elements: technology, casino, cause, and product. In a nutshell, the goal of technology is technological advancement. Key figures are innovators who maintain and build on the Zcash blockchain and make very complex things work. The stuff that they talk about goes over most people's heads because the brain power behind Zcash is out of control. And by the way, while we're on the topic of Zcash technology and the brain power behind it, let me say this because it doesn't get said enough. If everyone talks about Zcash snarks now, but Zcash was the first real-world application of zero-knowledge proofs. The engineering talent behind Zcash is mind-numbing, and the innovation that comes out of these teams benefits the entire blockchain industry. And no matter what anyone says, to this day, the privacy-preserving tech they've built is best in class. But you don't have to believe me, you can do your own research. My point is, this group of people is not to be underestimated. So shout out to Zcash developers everywhere. Moving on to the next element, casino. It focuses on gains and losses. The goal is to get relatively rich relatively quickly by doing relatively little. The key figures are investors. They take high risks in hope of significant financial returns. Ultimately, the casino views ZEC as a speculative investment tool. I want to be realistic. Given ZEC's price volatility, currently store value narratives are premature and fall into this category. All right, moving on. This next element is the heart of Zcash. The cause focuses on the greater good. The goal is protecting human liberties, and these are not just words. In modern societies, having a reliable medium of exchange that can be stored safely is, without exaggeration, essential to survival. When it is taken away, society collapses instantly. Unfortunately, we tend to take our ability to store and exchange value for granted, not realizing how dependent we are on the fragile systems outside of our control. We don't think about how easily it can be taken away. We shy away from those thoughts because they are unpleasant. But please follow me down this dark rabbit hole for a minute. What happens when a financial system collapses? When an already struggling population or select segments of it suddenly lose access to the funds they store and use? What happens when the ability to purchase food and medication is simply turned off for millions of people? How does turning off banking affect people's freedom to escape danger? What would you do if suddenly you could no longer make financial transactions? These aren't hypothetical scenarios. This happens to people that did nothing wrong, and it has happened to people before. And Zcash wasn't available for them. Some people say that it's too early for Zcash, but the truth is, for some people, it's too late. And for others, time is running out. Do not be so sure that you're not among them. Zcash can protect the public from black swan events by preserving our freedom to access our funds and transact with each other at any time. And what's even more important, its best-in-class privacy technology can protect our ability to vote with our wallets privately and without the fear of censorship and prosecution. A freedom that is not to be taken lightly. But in order to be our safety net, at the very least, Zcash needs to be part of everyone's emergency kit. So we need to start getting comfortable with using it and talking about it, which brings me to the fourth, my favorite aspect of Zcash, product. This is where the rubber meets the road. It is the key to everything. And the question is, what is the user-facing Zcash product? What is the experience like for different people? Who's using it and why? On its own, the store of value narrative is weak. Given the price volatility, storing ZAC cannot be recommended to others without storing value in ZAC cannot be recommended to others without it being interpreted as financial advice. So how do we move forward? All four aspects of Zcash are important, but Jur's main focus is the user-facing product. It ties everything together. In this presentation, I will show you why I'm laser focused on Zcash-powered private payments. Why at this stage of product adoption, which I will also explain, the focus has to be on early adopters of Zcash transactions. In this context, the goal of Zcash product is to make safe, censorship-resistant private payments. Users of those private payments are the key figures. ZAC is used as product successfully, and the key word here is successfully, when it is the preferred way to make a transaction. It is important to note that while all these elements overlap, users don't need to care about the cause or the technology to use the product. They simply need to have a problem that Zcash solves better than any other alternative known to them. So what's so special about Zcash payments? I want to quickly explain what Net Promoter Score is because it will help understand this next part of the presentation. NPS is a market research metric that is based on a single survey question asking respondents to rate the likelihood that they would recommend a company or a product to a friend or colleague. So the question goes like this. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Zcash payments? Detractors will respond 0 to 6, passives 7 to 8. Promoters respond 9 to 10. And promoters are loyal enthusiasts who will most likely recommend your business to others and help attract new customers. This is a very important group of users, especially early on, when word of mouth marketing is crucial to a product survival. We need to figure out how to maintain and grow that group. Who are they? Why are they so happy? What do they know that others don't? What can be done to convert passives into promoters? Why are detractors so unhappy? Can it be fixed? How expensive is it? So these are some questions about hand. And here's what the scores mean. Minus 100 means everyone is miserable. Plus 100 means everyone is happy. The latter is, of course, impossible. But obviously, you want to stay above 0. Last year, we didn't. According to a survey I ran, the score for Zcash was really sad, as you can see. It was like -60, which basically means we're in hell. But this year, things are looking up. According to a new survey I ran, the scores are 3 for transacting and 2 for holding, which is progress. We're above 0, so yay. By the way, in the first survey, I asked how likely are you to recommend Zcash. Later in the user interviews, people started breaking that question up into 2 parts, and it became very clear to me that it's almost 2 different products. So I've changed the question, but I also started thinking differently about what Zcash is to people. So I want to dive into the differences between the users who hold and transact in ZEC and the users who only want to hold ZEC but don't want to transact. These are the results from a survey I ran. On the left, we have holders who transact and generally display perfect early adopter behaviors when it comes to payments, which I will talk about later. On the right, we have holders who don't transact, and Zcashers in both categories hold ZEC, which is something I want to make clear. All of these groups hold ZEC, and the only difference is that one group transacts and the other one doesn't. Each small table represents a group of respondents that answer the question in a certain way, and I calculated NPS for each group. So, for example, if you look if you look at the column on the left, each NPS for people who said that they use ZEC for payments sometimes or often is 36 for holding and 50 for transacting. Both are far above the average scores of 3 for transacting and holding. If you look at the right column, NPS for people who said that they use ZEC for payments never or rarely is -15 for holding and -21 for transacting. Both are far below the average of NPS, which is a huge difference. If you compare the 2 columns, you'll see that it's a pattern. According to this, groups that transact are more likely to consist of promoters for both holding ZEC and transacting in ZEC. Groups that want to transact, I call them MOE proponents, are more likely to recommend transacting over holding. They also tend to give higher NPS to holding ZEC than SOV purists do, which is what I call people who just want to hold and don't want to spend. Supporting the SOV narrative better than the SOV purists. Holders that don't want to transact are far less likely to promote either narrative and are actually far more likely to be detractors of both narratives. This means that active users of ZEC payments are far more likely to be promoters of Zcash as a whole. So let me highlight the statement. Early adopters of payments benefit the entire ecosystem. They're the optimists we need to get to the next stage of product adoption. This is why, given my limited resources that don't allow me to target everyone at once, my main focus is on ZEC payments. So now let's talk about product adoption. Anyone who's ever launched a new product is hopefully familiar with this model. I didn't come up with it. It's a standard model that indicates how and when you should target segments of ideal customers throughout the product cycle. If you're curious about the significance of all these stages, I encourage you to read more about it online. But in a nutshell, this model helps us acknowledge where we are and what the next steps should be. So notice where the orange arrow is pointing. That's the stage we need to get through next. At this point, early adopters are what will keep us moving towards the mainstream interest and mass adoption that we all like to dream about. And I know some will say, well, Zcash has been around for 8 years. It's not a new product. And to them, I say, time doesn't matter. If you zoom out and see the magnitude of what we're trying to do here, this is still a very young project and in a very young industry. This hasn't been done before, and it was never going to be fast and easy. Again, let's be realistic. This isn't some fitness app on your phone, so product adoption for Zcash will have its own timeline. It's going to be different because we're talking about real use cases and delivering real value to the users, not some cheap pump scheme. So how do we deliver real value, and how do we communicate that value to potential users? Early adopters are the answer. I'm going to talk about them throughout my presentation, but right now I want to introduce them by saying that early adopters are what will get us through these early bumpy stages and onto wider adoption. And yes, they are a small group, but understand their importance. They're the users of ZAC payments that exist today. Their experiences can be used not only to inform development of a better product, but to educate and inspire other users within our community and beyond. Their experiences are key to creating content that resonates with other regular people. Before new users give Zcash payments a try, they need to see that others just like them have done it. Early adopter use cases must be studied and showcased in order to show the world what's possible instead of telling the world what's possible. Our grand ideas of a better future need to start touching ground. That's the power and purpose of the early adopters and their experiences. They can bring ZAC payments out of the realm of imagination and vision and into reality and practical use. If you're further out on this curve and you're not ready to use ZAC payments yet, that's totally fine. Not every early adopter of Zcash is an early adopter of Zcash payments. If you look at this image, the difference between the two groups are highlighted in orange. Maybe you're here for the technology or see ZAC as an investment opportunity. Maybe you support the cause. Your feedback is still valuable, and there's still so many other ways to get involved and contribute. But who knows, maybe the experiences shared by the early adopters of payments will get you curious about transacting in ZAC. Maybe those examples will demystify and normalize the whole process. This is how we reach new payment with our system and beyond. The Zcash community and existing users are a resource that is often overlooked. Targeting the broader market, or anyone outside of our community really, is a very expensive process. Even if we have the budget and the word to do it now, without having learned lessons from our existing users, chances of us using the allocated resources efficiently and effectively are extremely low. And when I say extremely low, I'm being generous. There is no magic pill. You can't just dream up the perfect strategy to target early majority directly and get mainstream interest. This is step one. And without it, our go-to-market strategy is a scattered mess of disjointed tactics. Early adopters are the key to product development and marketing. It's not a step that can be skipped. And yes, this is a difficult stage. This is the tough part, full of doubt and uncertainty. But the good news is that that's exactly what it's supposed to feel like. So let's not shy away from it. I cannot stress this enough. Early adopters is how we get through it. Please ask me questions if this is not clear. But perhaps I can show you what I mean. Okay, so this is my favorite example of an early adopter of ZAC payments. Meet Shayla. She lives in Venezuela, and she's a blogger with a passion for gastronomy. She bakes cookies and sells them for ZAC. She was introduced to Zcash by another Zcasher and saw an opportunity. She created a page on Free2Z and started posting classic recipes. The more she learned about Zcash, the more she realized that its values aligned with her beliefs, and she became an advocate for Zcash. When the economy got rough for her, she decided to start baking. Today, she bakes cookies and cakes and sells them to the Zcash community in Venezuela for ZAC. She also markets her business to other groups with common interests like women in tech, offering discount if they pay in ZAC. So Shayla is the perfect example of an early adopter of payments that benefits the ecosystem. She's a holder who transacts in ZAC. And because she gets paid in ZAC, she is what I call the perfect early adopter, a Zcash persona I will highlight later. I think what she's doing is absolutely wonderful. Her use case is relatable and it's not difficult to understand or replicate. I want to work with her and people like her to learn how users like Shayla can be supported and encouraged. I would buy one of Shayla's cookies right now, but unfortunately she doesn't offer international shipping yet. So if any of you decide to have a Zcash bake sale here in the United States, I'm ready to place an order. So check out her page on Free2Z. And if you're in Venezuela, please support her. And I'll be a little bit jealous here in the US. Okay, so since we're on the topic of use cases, here are a few more that came up in the user interviews and stood out to me. So several parents mentioned giving all or part of their children's allowance in ZEC in order to teach the kids about finances and the responsible ways to handle cryptocurrencies. One of the parents said that whenever his kids want to buy something, he acts as an exchange for them. So they send ZAC back to him and he converts it to fiat. I thought it was really cool. And I think that as a community, we can do some fun campaigns and workshops around this use case. So I'd love for all of us to collaborate on this. Another good use case from Venezuela is a cab driver who takes ZAC payments. He is the designated cab driver for several members of the local Zcash community. And whenever they need a ride, they call him. So this is another good example of someone who saw an opportunity in offering their service to the Zcash community. Another use case I would like to understand is payment to employees overseas. Keeping employee salaries private from other employees is important to employers. Also, there was a concern about employee safety. So this is a great use case to study and highlight to encourage other businesses with similar needs to follow suit. Step-by-step instructions and content that demystifies onboarding can be very helpful for this group of users. All right, so here are some other use cases that have come up in the interviews so far. This is how Zcashers have used or would like to use ZAC payments. Talking about these use cases in the interviews is what revealed the community's curiosity about ZAC payments in the first place. So sometimes I would bring up these use cases to users that initially said they weren't interested in spending ZAC, but talking about these use cases changed the flow of such conversations each time. Suddenly, we would go from theories to practical use, and they would switch from not being interested in ZAC payments to being curious about ZAC payments. These conversations moved us past talking about the technology that no one really understands to talking about things that are relevant and relatable. The top 3 use cases listed here are the ones I would like to spend more time on, as they seem to be key to user adoption. Okay, so let's get back to early adopters of payments. Based on the data from the interviews and the surveys, I've come up with a profile of my ideal early adopter of ZAC payments. Basically, if I could dream up the perfect group of ZAC users to study right now, what would the people in that group have in common? Again, these are the results from my survey. Each of these lines represents real respondents grouped by the indicated responses. These groups of respondents overlap. A person can be in more than one of these groups, and the more the better. So this is who I'm looking for. My goal is to find 100 people that check these boxes. These are the people who want to transact in ZAC. They're not afraid to use it for payments. They want more places to spend it, and they want to tell others about their positive experiences. Understanding this group of users will be very important to driving adoption. So if you're one of these unicorns, please reach out to me because I'm looking for you. Notice that sorry, I just lost my screen. Notice that 84% of perfect early EAs have received ZAC as payment for the goods and services they provide. In other words, these are the people who get paid in ZAC. From my personal experience, I can say that something happens when you start getting paid in ZEC. It changes your incentives. Personally, and maybe this is a controversial opinion, but I believe that anyone who benefits from the Zcash Dev Fund should be getting their paycheck in ZEC, or at least a significant portion of it, because it aligns our incentives with our most active users. People that get paid in ZEC engage in perfect early adopter behaviors like no other group. So let me talk about this group of people. Like all medium of exchange proponents, this group is happier with transacting in ZEC than they are with holding ZEC. They still hold it, it's just that they get more value from the ability to transact in ZEC. By the way, after P2P transactions, ZEC payments for goods and services I provide is the most mentioned use case, not me. ZEC payments for goods and services users provide is the most mentioned use case across all groups. Regardless of NPS, it was selected by 63% of all respondents as a use case they're interested in. So we need to learn more about this user group and find ways to expand it. This group of early adopters benefits the Zcash ecosystem in multiple ways. In addition to building the ecosystem and driving activity in the community, they're laying down the foundation for the Zcash economy. This means projects like ZEC Hub Free to Z, our ambassadors around the world, and other community projects. What gives these efforts fuel is the Zcash Dev Fund. So this is just one example of why advocating for its retirement seems irresponsible and out of touch with reality. Luckily, other paths forward seem to be more popular. Everyone I know who works on Zcash today is underpaid and overworked. Most of the people that are still here today are not here for the money. They actually love and believe in Zcash. We should be looking for ways to expand this group, not eliminate it. We need more people to get paid in ZEC. So going forward, I will be digging deeper into individuals and organizations that get paid in ZEC and users that make ZEC payments to others. How am I going to do that? Let me quickly explain my methodology. As part of my research, I've done user interviews and ran surveys. I shared some of my findings in a public report, which I posted on Zcash Community Forum. If you are a Zcash contributor or a builder and want more information, please reach out to me. I'll send you the link and I can walk you through the report if you have any questions. Some interesting patterns have emerged from all this research. For one, it is clear that early adopters look for ways to make a positive contribution to Zcash. These are the most active, enthusiastic members of our community, ready to go the extra mile for Zcash and practice and participate in various initiatives and activities. They contribute their time because they care slightly more than everyone else. So, of course, research results are going to be affected by their biases. For what I'm trying to do, that is okay. My goal isn't scientific accuracy. My goal is to study early adopters, the very people who are the most likely to participate. My research is not trying to be representative of everyone who's ever touched Zcash or knows about it. For the sake of saving time, I'll highlight the most relevant elements of my methodology. I see that there are some questions, but I will answer them after the presentation. All right, so interviews and surveys are at the heart of my strategy to study and engage with Zcashers. Each has its own benefits and limitations, but with time, survey questions get better, interviews become more focused, and the data gets better. The two feed each other. My surveys and interviews are mainly promoted on social media with support from ECC, Zcash Foundation, ZCG, and other Zcash contributors like Zcash ambassadors who translated the last survey to multiple languages and helped share it. The more people participate, the better the data gets. So if you're listening, I hope you will support and join this effort in the future. Another important piece of this puzzle is engagement with other Zcash builders and contributors. I want to make sure that the data is relevant and actionable, so I need to ask the right questions. But I also need to know what the potential next steps could be. This cannot be done without checking in with the various segments of the Zcash ecosystem. This is not just about better user research design, it's also about coordinating across the ecosystem on the next steps in order to drive adoption. I'm a huge fan of collaboration because no single individual or organization can do this alone. Speaking of collaboration and engagement, as I mentioned before, early adopters of Zcash and early adopters of Zcash payments are two different things. Early adopters of Zcash may not be ready to spend ZEC yet, and they won't be among the first people to spend ZEC, but they still have a very important role to play. From technology to advocacy, they make all kinds of valuable contribution to the Zcash ecosystem. I get to interact with all of them. Users, builders, contributors, enthusiasts, and people who are simply curious about Zcash. These interactions give me hope. There's something pure about all of it, and I'm not just trying to be nice. Interviewing the Zcash community has been an absolute privilege. I get to sit down with Zcashers one-on-one and listen to their stories. And let me tell you, this community is unlike anything I've ever seen. The quality of the people Zcash has attracted is off the charts. It is as if Zcash is a signal that went out into the universe, making people step forward. They are the reason why I'm still here, and they make me believe that this crazy thing we want to build together is possible. So join us. Whether you are a developer or a ZEC user, you can start by signing up for a one-on-one interview with me. The sign-up link is pinned on Jur's profile on X, which is @usezcash. Right now, collaboration across the community is one of my main objectives. We need to work together to build awareness and support major ecosystem milestones and releases. Nobody should feel like they're doing this alone. We can be more strategic about how we support Zcash organizations and individual contributors. Again, our community is an untapped resource. There are more things happening like workshops, community calls, casual online happy hours, and more. If liberty and economic freedom are your jam, and if Zcashers are your crowd, if you don't want to sit on the sidelines but don't know where to start here. Just sign up for the interviews. So back to where I started. I want a bright future for Zcash, but it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen on its own. If we are going to act, now is the time. And time is running out, which is why my mission is to put ZEC into the hands of as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. Not as a mere speculative tool, but as a medium of exchange for those who believe that law-abiding citizens, which is most people, are not to be treated as suspects in financial crimes every time they make a purchase or receive a payment. That citizens have the right to privacy and do not owe warrantless access to their financial information. Kind of like our technology, our community is underestimated, and that's fine. It doesn't matter. I am tired of outsiders telling us what we are and what we are capable of. We just might be the right group of people to pull this off. I don't know if any of us fully grasp the magnitude of that, but I think about it all the time. So let's make cool things happen together. So reach out to me on Twitter, on the Zcash community forum. I'll continue to reach out to people, so stay tuned because I'm really looking forward to this adventure with all of you. And thank you for listening. The end, or the beginning, which is, by the way, is what I think Josh meant in his ZCon presentation earlier, because when I presented at ZBoot a few months ago, this is the slide I ended with. And originally my slide said the end, but right before I got up to do the presentation, I changed it to the beginning because that just felt more right, because it is only the beginning. So, okay, I'm done now, and I can take questions. But let me figure out how to stop sharing my screen. Oh. No. and it's just quiet. I'm not even sure if I'm online yet. Okay, so, what advice do you have for us to continue supporting and promoting the daily use of Zcash in our communities? Okay, that's a good question. So I think the important thing is to focus on small wins, and like don't psych yourself out with like mass adoption and like all these big words. I think small steps are the key here. And what's important also is to celebrate those small wins with the community, like show your small wins so that we can we can enjoy them too and share them with others. And that's actually good advice from me as well. So just remember to share little successes in as much detail as you can. Okay, another question. Personally, I think your initiative is very important. Do you plan to have some kind of fund to organize face-to-face events in some cities? Or is your initiative only going to be to disseminate information virtually? I mean, it would be cool. It would be really cool to meet everyone in person. So, yeah, of course. But meetings, like ZCon, for example, in person, it's a very expensive event to arrange. So it's just, I mean, it's a matter of expenses. But sure, I would love to meet everybody in real life. Maybe we could do this as part of ZCon or maybe ZBoot or his Zec Summit. Okay, another question. The average number of shielded transactions on chain shows there's much work to still to be done. Does your research suggest that low adoption rates are due to poor UX, meaning improving the rails, building better tech and wallets, and wallets will lead to organic growth? Okay, or do we need to double down on efforts to evangelize, drive adoption in new communities? Zcash could facilitate. I'm not sure what the right answer here is. I think you need both. We can't just build our way out of into adoption. Like you need some evangelizing, you need some education and community outreach. I can't really tell. I haven't looked into the difference between private transactions and shielded transactions. Like right now, I just want people to transact. We can on better ways to do it, but I think the important thing is still just to get people to engage. Could Zcash facilitate sound e-payments where a vendor couldn't accept traditional cards? You could. I mean, why not? But I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I will not be the one building it. Are there particular geographical locations where payment adoption is or would be more likely? Yes, it is. Latin America seems to be super active, but I wouldn't discount the U.S. market. And also Africa, countries in Africa like Nigeria. I think the community right now is still small. I mean, the international community in general. So I think it's too soon to be like trying to divide these markets into separate pieces. I think the key is to actually raise those boundaries and for all of us to work together and learn from each other. So that's actually part of what I would like to do. So I'm not like Zcash is supposed to be borderless. So I'm not thinking about it in terms of just like regions. So yeah. Okay. Your help is very important. Thank you. How can we get feedback efficiently to then use resources efficiently to create a better better ecosystem? Well, we start by talking about this. I do publish reports, but I think just face-to-face contact with developers and representatives from different organizations in the ecosystem. I think that's the first step. This is how we're gonna like figure out what we need. Like right now, I'm reaching out to organizations trying to figure out which of their milestones need support or like could benefit from the support of the community. So I think the first step is just to start these conversations. If we could materialize a feature tomorrow, which one would it be according to your research? So there are two main barriers preventing Zcashers from transacting right now. No ways to spend Zec and poor wallet experience. So I think anything that improves those two things would be a good thing. I'm not clear on specific features. I think you still need to figure out like what does it mean when people say that poor wallet, that the wallet experience is poor. Does that mean bad UX, or is it something more like is their wallet not syncing? So just looking into that category, those two categories would be the right move for user adoption. Is the cryptocurrency experience affecting the Zcash adoption? I'm not sure what that means. What do you mean by that? What is cryptocurrency? What do you mean by cryptocurrency experience? Maybe you mean yeah, of course. Okay, maybe they mean the generally negative aspect of cryptocurrency. Probably. I mean, there are scams out there, right? So we just need to make sure we communicate that we're not, that we're not part of that crowd. We've been around for a while, and we're not trying to scam people, and like everything's out in the open, and they can ask questions. I think we just need to welcome people. I don't know. I don't know. Probably it's affecting adoption. How could it not? If everybody, if tomorrow CNN starts watching, maybe CNN doesn't matter today, but if there are if all media suddenly started singing praises to cryptocurrencies, it would be good for our adoption as well. So I think that's all the questions. I don't know if I say bye. I think I can just say bye. Unless there are more questions.